My name is David.
Hey, this is Tim.
And you are listening to Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast where two old friends get together. They talk about horror, science fiction, films, television, series. Every episode of this podcast, we try to cover things that we like, we don't like, or whatever about the topic. And hopefully mention things that kind of have affected us in our lives, or the things that we think this particular topic has affected, if that makes sense to anyone out there listening. So we cover a variety of topics.
I'm with you, whether or not they are. I
am. We cover a lot of topics. I'm the science fiction guy usually. Tim's the horror maniac. So
yeah, it's in my veins.
Excellent. How you been? What have you been up to, Tim?
I've been good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I actually, in my infinite spare time, I started a new series.
Of which we have tons.
Yes. I started a new series that was suggested, which is, it's from Fox. It's The Gifted. It's a story of it's like X-Men. It's one of those, we have these latent mutant powers which have surfaced, and it affects, the mutant underground. And it's been pretty good so far. I've just finished season 1 and kind of impressed, and it's pretty good. Not as soap opera-y as all the, the other Fox ones, which are like The Flash and Green Arrow and all those. So
is it Marvel?
Yeah, it's X-Men. Isn't X-Men Marvel? I don't
Yeah, Marvel is X-Men. I just didn't know if it was a knockoff or something.
Well, basically, no, because the references that I've heard in it, I've even heard before, and I'm not a big comic book guy, but it essentially takes place after the X-Men have left, and I don't know if that ever happened in the comic books, but the X-Men have disappeared, and no one really knows why. Is the premise of it. And there was this horrible event, I think they call it 5/11 or 5/12 or something like that, and evidently it was the last big stand of Magneto against the humans, and after that, basically Xavier, Magneto, all the rest of them have disappeared, and they've entrusted this younger group of underground individuals, mutants, to kind of keep the mutant underground alive, sort of thing. And so it's been pretty interesting, but they've just brought up spoiler alert, everyone, just go quiet for a second. But there was this one girl, and she was a telepath, and she was influencing them, and I couldn't tell, is she a good girl, is she a bad girl, blah blah blah. She was telling them that this episode was all about, there's this prison facility for mutants, and she wanted to break out all the mutants in it, and they ended up doing it. And the reason you find out is because 2 of her sisters were in there, and they're all triplets, and their mother was Emma Frost. They're the Frost triplets. So lots of links to X-Men, but not a lot of I don't know how accurate it is to the mythos, if that makes sense.
I don't even know who Emma Frost is.
She was the big telepath.
I'm a comic book guy.
She was the big telepath for Xavier.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe you. I mean, I didn't read I did read them in the periphery, but my whole 10 years of comic lore was primarily Avengers and Justice League.
Well, that's good.
And a few offshoots. But so, I mean, I can follow the Avengers movies, but if you start going too far off into like X-Men territory or even Guardians, I don't know that much about Guardians except for what I've seen in the films.
Right.
I enjoy it because it reminds me of when I was a kid. I just, I couldn't, well, for one thing, I couldn't afford to keep collecting comic books. It got too expensive.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I was never into comics, but I love the Avengers. Mostly that was because I liked Iron Man to begin with, and I thought Jon Favreau did a great job. And then, the Avengers were both Joss Whedon, who's one of my favorites. So I appreciate him from the storytelling angle. That's why I like. Another new thing this week, they premiered the trailer for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I love that series. So it's going to come out again in a few months. So
cool.
What about you? Anything new, interesting, different?
I've got a few things. I'm still watching The Passage, and I
Hmm.
liked this week's episode a lot. It was kind of a character deep dive
Okay, good.
into one of the prisoners that's in that show. Still following the book, although it's not. I mean, it is the story of the book, but it's you can tell he's rewritten it for television.
Well, yeah.
Um, I'm looking forward to, I guess, subscribing to Shudder because Greg Nicotero is doing a creep show television series for that network, and I
Hmm.
have since found out that the first episode is going to be Survivor type, which is a
Wow.
really gruesome story that Stephen
Yeah.
King wrote. Yeah, and
Auto
they're also
cannibalism
doing
right
what's
there.
that?
Auto
Nah,
cannibalism.
yeah, let's eat ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, and then Joe Lansdale's going to have a story in it too, so I'm looking forward to that.
Mm. Okay. Well, I
And
saw that King announced The Stand. They're doing a new version of The Stand.
yeah, guess where it's going to be?
I don't know where.
CBS
All
All
access.
Access.
Yeah, figures.
And, yeah, they're trying to get me to subscribe, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah, they
I'll
are.
wait till that
They're
sucker's
getting some
on.
heavy hitters, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dang it.
But my big news is I completely devoured that show, The Kingdom, on Netflix.
Mm.
It is about um, mid-century, or not mid-century, mid 19th century Korean zombies.
Well, that's a subgenre that I'm sure is very popular. So.
Oh my God, it's great. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a period piece. I'm serious. I am not joking. It looks like I'm imagining Game of Thrones probably looks, though I haven't watched that.
Boy,
It's
it'd have
just,
to have some impressive production values then.
yeah, well, it does, and it's like Asian dynasty type drama with royalty, and then all of a sudden they just throw crazy ass zombies in the mix, and it's like, damn. But there's great healthy doses of like God's, like quirky, hokey Godzilla moments. Everybody around, the zombies are coming, and it's subtitled.
No, 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 no. No.
Yeah, that's great.
I just picture the guy
So
wandering into like an old blockbuster store going, "You got any Korean zombies? I want something."
yeah, that would be me.
True, so true. Well, I
so
don't know
so
if I'll
that's
check that
my
one out, but I might. You never know.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah, it's worth it. I mean,
it's
two
worth it.
days. I did the whole thing in 2 days.
There you go.
It's only 6 episodes. It's only six, so it's not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, possibly. I'll just have to wait and see. But
And the sequel, I mean, the second season is being filmed this month.
oh yay!
So,
We don't want to lose that.
nope, nope. Do not deny me my zombies.
Okay, well, this episode, for those of you who are listening, still listening to us, we've been spending some time with the adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House. And the series that was on Netflix, and it's our total second watch through the whole thing, and we're just taking it episode by episode and trying to talk through it and give our thoughts and our feelings and everything. And it's been good so far. It's been fun to watch it again and to get your insight as well, which I've enjoyed. And this week we are jumping into the seventh episode, which was entitled
Entitled Eulogy.
Eulogy, which basically takes place the next day after the morning after the last episode. So we're getting as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think ahead from the first time I watched the series through. I think from now on we're basically chronological as far as present day goes. We everybody arrived. We had the night of the storms. Then this is the morning after, and then the next 3 episodes are that night. So I think it's very concise in its storytelling going forward. I think. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
This one was, again, wasn't written by Flanagan, but it was directed by him. And I think you can tell it has a lot of great directorial touches again, just like the last episode, and well, all of the ones he's directed. What did you think of it overall? This particular episode, is there like an overarching thing?
Well, I enjoyed this episode. You had little elements that kind of continued from the Two Storms episode prior,
Mm-hmm.
with Shirley still being angry. She's really good at it. Theo being hungover.
Mm-hmm.
Luke grieving. Anyway, the big thing that I did notice this time about this episode is, how we've talked about the first 5 episodes being about each individual sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 6th episode was Two Storms, where the past and the present come to clash, as far as what's going on in their lives and why they are this way.
Mm-hmm.
But this episode, I just realized, is Hugh's episode.
I
So
have
he
the
gets
same
his
thing.
own too.
Yes, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, I guess 20, 25 minutes into the episode, and went, wait, every single scene has been from Hugh's point of view.
Right.
All of
It's
this
like,
is
finally.
so. This is his story. Thought that, yeah. So I had the same revelation. That's great, great minds, sort of thing. And yeah, it relies a lot on Elliot and Hutton, the two actors who are playing, young
Elliot.
Hugh and old Hugh. And I think they did a good job, both of them.
What is his name? You can't call him Elliot.
Oh, I'm sorry, Thomas.
Something Thomas.
Yeah,
Elijah?
no, not
Is
Elijah.
it? No. Not Elijah Wood. What is his name?
Mr. Thomas
Oh.
is his name. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Google it while I give this
I am actually looking
synopsis.
right now.
So for those of you who are hopefully following along with us, and either it's your first time watching this series, or maybe
Henry
you're watching...
Thomas.
Who?
Henry Thomas.
Henry, yeah, my bud, Henry Thomas.
Elliot.
Yeah,
Elliot.
Elliot, phone home. But we get distracted. So those of you who are following along and watching it with us, there will be spoilers, so just telling you that. Hopefully you've watched this episode before you're listening to us. The basic synopsis of this one is, like we said, it takes place the next day following the family's arrival and the viewing of friends, as the archaic thing happens at funerals. This is the day of the funeral and the reactions of everybody there. But it's also, like every episode this season, also goes back into the past. And this is the first time, I wanted to go back and confirm this, but I'm not sure. Maybe you know, Tim, but this is the first time we see 3 different time periods at the same time. Because we have going back to just after the storm and what happened and everything that comes from that. But the episode starts and ends after they've left the house, and after that evening, and after the whatever happened back then happened, and he's called the police, and they found his wife's body and all of that. So we've got 3 different time periods, present day essentially,
And 2 in the past.
and 2 in the past. So
Right.
and I don't think
The first scene actually is after that scene where he's bloody and sitting on the bench with Nell before the cops come.
Yeah, in
Because
episode
the
3.
opening scene is when he's basically being interrogated, for lack of a better word. He's not really being interrogated; he's just being held. But yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
there are
so,
2 periods
so
going on there.
I think this is 3 different, time periods. Well, let's talk about it. That particular scene opens it, and yeah, it's I like the way you said that. He's not being interrogated, because that cop is so. I don't trust him. He says his inflections are so nice, and he's such a good. Can I get you some coffee? Yeah. What? Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot. But underneath, there's this layer of, I'm going to mess you up if you lie to me again, kind of thing. He's
Yeah, I wrote down he's got great technique for
mm-hmm.
getting. He's trying to nip this all in the bud without bringing lawyers or anything into it.
Yeah, and everything's like an aside, the way he says it. He goes, if you lawyer up right now, I won't be able to help you, Hugh. Blah, blah, blah. And he does all that, and what was the one about, because I want, when you walk out of here, if you walk out of here, I want you to be totally guiltless, totally without blame.
Right.
And you're going, okay, what does that mean? I don't, really good. And both of them played it really well, because I still got the impression that Henry Elliott Thomas was still in a bit of shock. He didn't know how to handle it and what to do. But we did get them, we got another bit of our mystery, which was, I think he says at one point, I need to know about those 3 hours between when it happened and when you called the police. And why did it take you 3 hours? And his answer was he was grieving. And we all know as television viewers that that's not true. Something else was happening. We just don't know what yet.
Right.
Because still, we don't know what's happened that night. But in my notes, I wrote down great scene, good characters, and a key. This is one of my keys for this episode. It reminded me of Inglourious Bastards. The very beginning scene with the milk and the guy with his family under the floorboards and the German interrogating him. And it's so tense, and that one is much more intense and just so well done. But it's that interrogation where there's layers underneath, and you're not sure if what you're saying is right, what to trust. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? That sort of thing. So that was one of the keys I wrote from it. It reminded me of that.
Yeah, I don't remember that movie, but I know I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's
Christoph Waltz, I think, or Waltz is the German.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good scene. But we go from there, and this entire episode we jump back and forth in time a lot, which is fine. We had an episode last week, which was 15 solid minutes at a time, and this one's going back and forth, and so it's okay.
Well, and in this one, Olivia is practically a regular character again too.
Yeah. One of my notes is, so I bet Carla was saying, "Thank God my part's back," kind of thing, because she got to actually do stuff. Which
and she's got more as a ghost in the present than she does as herself in the past.
Correct. Yeah. Although there is that great scene at the architect table for her. It was well done with her. Yeah. But let's talk about that.
One of my absolute favorite things is in this too. We'll get to it in a minute though.
Okay.
All right. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, so let's talk about that. The scene after the interrogation, the second scene in this entire episode, is Hugh at his hotel room talking to someone. And we don't know who he's talking to, but he's having an entire conversation with them. He's not just telling them something. He's saying, "Does he like this? Well, why not?" Well, and he's obviously having conversation. We don't know who yet.
No. And he looks like he's dressed for a funeral.
Right. Then we go to the funeral home, and everybody's kind of, I guess, arriving for a second viewing. I don't know what that was. Well, no, actually for the funeral. Duh, David. And we pan over, and we actually see Olivia, and see that that's Hugh, who Hugh is talking to, his dead wife.
Right. And he started that, of course, in the prior episode.
Yeah. And which, of course, Steve thought, who were you talking to? Mental illness.
Mental illness runs in our family.
Okay, so, while we're there, let's talk about overarching. So, Olivia, in this episode, we see her. She's beautiful. I don't necessarily know if she's dressed right for a funeral, because it's kind of a sexy little getup she's wearing the whole time, and it bodes the question: is she a ghost in this episode? What do you think?
Yes.
You do.
I'm going to always favor the side of ghost because that's what I'm into.
Hmm. Okay.
um, I mean, what else would she be?
Well, and again, this is overarching. We don't
Oh,
have to
you
go
mean
through.
his imagination, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
his version of Olivia. And the first time I watched this series, I didn't think that. I thought, oh, that's Olivia's ghost.
Hmm.
But when we saw Olivia's ghost in episode 4, although she looked beautiful and everything else, she had a dark tone to her and was so glad that Nellie had come home and everything else. And she ended up, you know, there's a debate about it, but she ended up pushing Nellie off the railing. Um,
Hmm.
in this episode, we see Olivia twice evil, at the gravesite and then behind the desk and all that. And to me, those were ghosts. But this glamorous, beautiful, always offering the perfect advice, everything else, Olivia, isn't a
Is
ghost.
Hugh's version.
It's Hugh's version.
Yeah.
Uh, Mostly because it's always positive affirmations or corrective affirmations. She's either she's helping him no matter what, all the way along. From the very first
Hmm.
scene where she's helping him get dressed, even up to stuff like don't say it, don't do it.
I love that. Yeah.
um,
Don't.
yeah, and saying I think a lot of things that he's mentally saying to himself. Well, you knew she would be here when he first sees the aunt and everything else.
Aunt Janet.
Aunt Janet, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. I mean, I don't know, listeners, if you're out there, prove me wrong if you don't think so, but I think there's a difference between the ghost Olivia, who actually is still possessed by the house and wants them all back, and this heightened Olivia, which is Hugh's coping mechanism. He even says at the end when he's talking to Luke, or near the end, that some people see he even says, I see your mother every day. I have since that
Uh-huh.
night. And I think that's who he's referring to, is this Olivia.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. And now that you mention it, I see what you mean when you say that, whether or not it's his imagination or if it is her ghost. And I've
right.
always found that whether it be literature or film, it's always more unique to not know
Mm-hmm.
where it could be played either way.
Correct. And
Um,
I think
but
Flanagan's done that here. I like that. And I like the
mhm,
fact that there's some ambiguity and all that. It's just that, I think looking at it overall as a series, all of the ghosts from Hill House are malevolent. There's not a nice one, there's not a good one. They're all mean.
I don't
Um,
know. I don't think Nell is.
Nell is scary.
She's scary, but I think she's trying to either warn them or at times bring them together. I don't see her
Yes,
as a
I agree
one.
with that. I think Nell shines through because Nell can combat the house a little bit. I think because her personality still stays there from a loving, take care of the family kind of perspective. But still,
Hmm.
every time we see a ghost, it's scary, not nice and sweet and glamorized and wearing a sexy blue top and everything else. Even later on, even in the coming up episodes, they're
Right.
still scary.
Well, and if you consider what the house is, if you want to go out on a limb here and say the house is an entity in itself and it's some malevolent force, then they could just be that force could be manifesting himself or itself in the form of Olivia when Nell gets there and she pushes her off the thing just to lead her in. I
Oh
mean, it
yeah,
may not be Olivia at all.
correct, correct. I think
So,
I think the spirits
yeah,
of the house are whatever the house wants them to be.
right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's very
Yeah,
true.
and I mean, and Olivia may be a manifestation of Hugh's subconscious. He's like, I've fucked up my whole life, and he needs her alter ego, for lack of a better expression, to point him in the right direction so he doesn't keep doing it. I don't know.
Yep, 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 yep.
So, I mean, that's what makes great stuff, is that it leads to discussions like this, where there is no finite answer.
Yeah, I agree
So,
with that, and I
yeah.
think that's good literature. That's good storytelling. We've talked all along in this series about what Flanagan does best is the storytelling and the fact that all of his characters have stories to tell.
Mhm.
which, and some of those are ambiguous and one of, but they all propel the plot somewhere, a little bit forward, which is good.
Mhm.
You mentioned the house, and it kind of made me want to talk about a little bit about. So this is in this particular episode, we spend a lot of time back in Hill House, but it's not the creepy at night during a storm Hill House or the the dogs are barking and someone's tugging at my leg Hill House. It's much more of the Hughes version. So, like you said, so everything is
A
during the
money
day.
pit.
Usually during the day, it's bright, and he has to say, "I can fix it" about 900 times.
Right,
Uh,
right. It's house flipping nightmare.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was curious that wasn't the title. The title being "I can fix it." you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh yeah, that's a good suggestion actually.
but this episode. We see that beneath the walls, the house is rotten. It has this awful black
Metaphor,
mold.
anyone?
Yeah. Uh, was it the first episode where Olivia did the big thing about, or Hugh did the big thing to Nell about the pipes or blood vessels and the walls or bones or I'm struggling because I can't remember who said it, but they did that whole
I think it was
allegory.
Olivia saying it to Shirley, wasn't it, when she was talking
Yeah,
about the dream house?
yeah, and did the whole
Maybe.
metaphor about how the house is like a body.
Hmm.
Um, Well, and if that were true, then this black mold is what, like cancer or whatever,
Right.
taking over the house, kind of thing. So there's a huge metaphor in there.
Hmm.
Everything Hugh uncovers keeps pointing back to the Red Room, which again,
The
storytelling
heart.
wise, I think is good because that is the heart of this house, as opposed to
Hmm.
the Forever house, where the heart was. She said the living room where she could see the kids all around and Hugh, and she said that's the heart of the house. Um, but in Hill House, the heart is definitely the Red Room. And I thought we would get there because Hugh has we don't know his version of Red Room, and no one's been in there yet. So thought we would get there, but we didn't in this episode. So, what else? Big thing. So basically, we're going back and forth between Hugh trying to fix this house up, him getting the first inklings that something ain't right with Olivia. She's acting a little weird. And then the funeral, the eulogy at the gravesite, the reception after, and then that third storyline with the police officer having an interrogation. Um, I thought this whole episode had some great performances. Theo, I think, was great in it. The whole scene where she meets Hugh in the morning and she's hungover and she's saying I fucked up, and that sort of thing was great. Um, I thought we didn't have a lot of Steve, which kind of was good for me in this episode. I like the
Yeah, he
fact that
gets on my nerves.
yeah, same thing with Shirley. They both can get on my nerves really quickly. Uh,
Hmm.
but this was mostly a Hugh story and told a lot through Timothy Hutton and Henry Thomas.
Well, you've got some really cool transitions with dialogue too, from past to present again in this episode, like with the "what a mess" line,
Oh
and
yeah,
then it's
yeah.
"what a mess" in the past, which I
Mm-hmm.
believe is in regards to the mold, is it not? Oh no, no, it's in regards to the debris from all the trees crashing through the windows that night that
Yeah,
um, Olivia was walking. He was following Olivia walking through all the hallways.
yeah. And the
Um,
present is Hugh talking about the whole situation with Nellie being dead and all them having to be there, and he says, "What a mess." So yeah,
right.
it's Hugh saying it both times, and then I think the next transition, a couple scenes later, is Hugh in the past banging on the wall, and it goes to him knocking on the door of Theo's little side
Uh,
apartment house.
it does. I do have that in my notes as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
So yeah, he does these clever transitions, but they're not pretentious. They're not in your face. He's not
No,
making a point of it this time, like he did in I think episode 3, where they were
no, they're
obviously there was a
actually
reason.
right. It's almost like it's expected.
Yeah.
We're now to the point where it's just common, you
Yeah,
know.
we're used to them. So help us ease
Yeah.
back. But and maybe that's it. It does help us ease back and forth in these time transitions. And he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
put up, the little thing at the bottom that says present day or the night before they left or, whatever. The night they found the mold. Um, so there's lots of transitions in there that he does well. I wrote down one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite lines in it is "This house is schizophrenic," and I think that's
I do
Olivia that
remember
says
that.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's after Hugh has found the initial damage of the black mold, and he's trying to explain it to Olivia. Um, let's see what else. Cutting back and forth, we get to so we go to the funeral itself, which is a great scene. I thought it shows the uncomfortableness of everybody, and back to your point from the beginning, it's basically taken from Hugh's point of view. A lot of these scenes in the present start with like a close up or a mid shot of Hugh, and he's watching everybody else. He's not talking
Mm-hmm.
to them or interacting or anything. It's just him watching and us then going to his POV and seeing what he's observing. Like at this funeral scene when they're about to have the service itself, and he can see Steve and his wife arguing. Doesn't hear them,
Lee.
but
Lee
just can.
comes in, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, and that's awkward.
right, and I have this note here. I said, okay, so Olivia's still talking to him the whole time, and one of the things she says is, we were always good. Those last few days don't count. That wasn't us. I thought that was another good line. Um,
It wasn't her. I don't know that it wasn't him, but yeah,
right. And
yeah, I
then
think it was still him.
uh, he goes to kind of see if Lee is okay. Ends up being kind of a nice moment with the hug, and then she walks in, and I have so basically in this scene all the men are screwed. Steve and Kevin are both estranged from their wives. Luke is in intense mourning, and Hugh is talking to his dead wife.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we got some effed up male psyche stuff going on here.
Yeah, yeah. And he also peppers this, I think, with a little bit of humor in this episode. I like one of the first ones I liked was who is it that comes in? Oh, no, who is it? Well, kind of humorous with the whole beer and tomato juice with Luke
That's
telling her.
hilarious.
Yeah, but Luke
Where
telling
she's
her that
getting
it's.
hangover remedies from her addicted brother.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that is hilarious.
And she says something like, "Wait, so you're saying the best hangover remedy is heroin?" And he goes,
Is
"Nothing like it."
heroin.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that line.
And then you have the scene where that's the next part because Theo's one night stand, which was a 2 night stand.
Trish. Her
Yeah.
name is Trish.
Okay,
Yes.
Trish shows up and Theo's irritated and they're obviously having a fight, and she says something like "fuck my life" and walks away, and Trish just looks at the guys, and Dad and Luke just kind of wave. It's
Yeah,
like,
like she's part of their party
yeah,
unofficially.
and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Hey, how are you? I don't know you,
Hmm.
but I hope it all works out. um, and that's another line I have here. I have Luke, because Luke, mentions the wedding and how he and Nellie first found out, or how
Hmm.
Nellie first found out. So obviously Nellie has told him about the wedding, and he's heard about the wedding through the family. I thought that was good backstory. But
Yeah.
he's talking about it, and Hugh has the line about, yeah, your mother always knew. She knew when Theo was 8. She knew. And yet none of the other kids in the family knew until she was in her mid-20s, probably, for Nellie's wedding. So that was interesting. I thought that
Hmm.
was, and again, it's Hugh, idolizing Olivia and idolizing his wife.
Right. I like how she is coaching him on like how to do things, like how to speak to Luke.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. She says stuff like, "You don't have to. It's okay to just sit. You don't have to say
yeah,
anything."
exactly. It's like I can't be there the whole time, so don't fuck up when I'm not.
Please, please don't mess this up. Yeah, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I have another note
huh.
that I was going to see what you thought. When Aunt Janet arrives,
Yeah.
and I think it's Hugh that she hugs, she
Mm-mm.
says, "None of us should be here."
Yeah. She hugs
What do you
Luke.
think? What's that?
She hugs Luke. She does
Oh, is
not
it
hug
Luke?
Hugh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's Luke.
Yeah.
Why do you think she says that? None of us should be here.
Oh, because I think that's her grief line. That's her, this shouldn't have happened. We should not. Well, I actually, yeah, I'm like you. I think I saw other subtext underneath it. I think
Right.
on the surface, she's saying, I wish this hadn't happened. We should all not be together this way. But
Right. That's
I
the
also,
like the standard or
yeah, but
the
I think
regular
she's
meaning
also
of it.
saying, we shouldn't be here because this should have never happened because Olivia should not have died. Your mother should not have died. My sister should not have died and put us in this situation. And Hugh
Hmm.
messed it all up. I think she still blames Hugh. That's the
Hmm.
impression I got.
Okay.
What did you get?
I don't know. I really don't have a definitive answer. It was one of those lines that I thought could probably be played multiple ways,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
depending on how well she liked each individual. I mean, maybe she thought that it should have been Luke, or maybe she expected it to have been Luke and not now.
Possibly. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Um, or maybe she's blaming Hugh. You
I think
shouldn't
she
be
blames Hugh.
here. This is your fault. Or like
And
you
I think
said,
that
maybe it's
was,
got something to do with Olivia being dead already.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's overall estrangement in general. I think, based on where we are in the series right now, uh, I I think Hugh basically dumped them at Janet, or had them go stay with their Aunt Janet, while he fended off the press and everybody else and all the people and took all the heat of being a crazy or did you kill your wife or whatever, and did all of that to protect them and to shield them, but also stayed out of contact with them. And as that time increased, I think the Aunt Janet ended up becoming resentful and saying Hugh wasn't
Hmm.
doing his part and wasn't taking care of the kids.
Well, and Olivia has a line to him where she says she's essentially her mother, or something to that effect,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
where she says, "Don't forget, she practically
She
is her
raised him.
mother."
Yeah, she
She
raised her.
raised them. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's true. And
Hmm.
and that's, I think, another guilt thing for Hugh. Uh,
Right.
I think his arc for the whole series is realizing that he can't fix everything, and by trying to fix it, he actually messed it up worse. Uh, Not quite a Macbeth, thing, but a very guilt-ridden. I regret what I've done in the past, kind of thing.
Right.
Trying to be beneficial, but it had the negative results, kind of thing. Well, we go back and forth in the past. We get all the stuff with the blueprints and all that, but in the present, we actually have the eulogy itself, and Shirley is reading one of the most cliche funeral poems in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, and I, I thought that was an interesting choice by the writer and by Flanagan. That it wasn't poetic or appropriate. Not that it wasn't appropriate, but it's so cliche to do that particular poem.
But death is a business to her. This is what she
Oh
knows to
yeah,
do.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
She's probably done
Um,
that at several funerals.
right. She thinks it's the right thing to do.
Right, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, keep up appearance, and not just keep up appearances. Just do the right thing. Do what's normal and what works.
And
Um,
that's her way of fixing it because she is the fixer as well
mm-hmm,
in the
mm-hmm.
family. So
Yeah, well, and you made me think. Uh, Maybe they did it on purpose too, so that Luke's would have even more power and pathos to it.
Luke's is brilliant
Oh my
and
God!
impromptu. Yeah.
Uh, I wrote down here favorite moment in the episode is when because Shirley kind of brushes it off. If anybody wants to say anything, okay, and just kind of goes over and sits, and it shows that shot of Janet and Steve and Luke, and you can see Dad in the background and Theo, and you're thinking, okay, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? And Luke stands up,
Hmm.
and Janet and Steve both react with this kind of shocked look. It cuts to Hugh, and you can see Olivia sitting behind him. And Hugh kind of half smiles, and Olivia does that wonderful sound of the like, oh, that's great. Good for you. It was
Hmm.
really, I loved it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not my
and,
favorite moment, but
oh,
my
it's,
favorite
yeah.
moment's later on. But anyway, it is a great, great
And
eulogy that he
then what he
does, and it's all
says,
off the cuff. And
oh,
what he
yeah.
says, what he finishes it with, just blew me away.
Oh, yeah. I have boo hoo, but just because it was that, what was it? It was, because he said, he reiterated the same thing of, I was born 90 seconds before, but she's always been my older sister.
Right,
And you go,
right,
oh my God. That was so powerful. See, it kind of choked
yeah,
me up right now. Um,
yeah.
so it was just that again, Luke keeps coming up to be my favorite character. Even though I like Theo a lot, Luke keeps coming up to be my favorite character, just the most
Well,
emotional
I think
character.
it. I think what it is that Luke is the best deep and dramatic character, whereas Theo can be dramatic, but she's got the comic timing down. So if you want
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah, yeah.
comedy, that's where you're looking, because
Yeah.
Theo is hilarious.
Yes. True. Um, so then we cut from that and we go to we're in the basement that supposedly never existed, but
Right.
but Luke found it, and it's got mold too, and we don't know what to do about it. And we're starting to clean it up, and Mr. Dudley's there to help, and he gets his time to shine for the whole series,
Hmm.
and tells that story.
That's
Great,
it, man. That's the episode right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
It's got nothing to do with the family. It's got to do with the history.
uh huh,
And that soliloquy, I mean, actors should use that to audition with. That he is brilliant delivering that speech.
I agree,
And the
I agree.
first time I saw it, not this time, but the first time I saw it, I went back and watched it twice,
Hmm.
making sure I heard every single word. But
Well,
it's
we
brilliant.
find
I
out
wish I'd
his
timed
wife's
it.
name is Claire, and we find out about Hazel. We find out he had a stillborn baby. I mean, oh
Right.
my gosh, there's just so much
Hmm.
to it, and he does it with his pacing is so great all the way through it. Um, the it
Yes.
stays right on him too. We don't do cutaways to Hugh. We basically stay on him as he tells this
And
entire
it's
story.
Yeah, and it's terrifying. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is what ghost stories are made out of. It is
Mm-hmm.
great. It is just that good.
Yeah. And again, it goes to our whole thing we've been saying for this entire series is what makes it work is the storytelling and the fact that everyone basically has a story to tell, but just so well crafted in the way it's written and the way it's structured. Um, we find out,
Layers.
we find out all and it's not, it's purposeful storytelling and writing because we find out a lot of the history of the house. We find out a lot of the history of the Dudleys,
Hmm.
and why they don't go there at night anymore, and why things are so kind of what was the term he used for Olivia or his wife? She was scattered.
Scattered, yeah.
When she
and
started
they use that
being
phrase a lot.
Yeah, because he goes, so just, it's none of my business, but should your wife start being scattered, you might want to consider. I was going, yeah.
I made reference to it later. I'll probably come across it in my notes where I said, oh, she's scattered later on in the episode. Yeah, yeah. So it ties in.
Yeah, definitely.
He's basically saying, this could happen. You say I don't have any business saying that. I can't remember what the phrase was he used.
It's none of my
you
business.
Have no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he closes.
No, it's not my place. That's what he says. He says the classic, it's not my place.
And it may not be my place, but should your wife start acting, that's how he ends it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's when you start seeing it in her later.
Well, yeah, because the first, I think, inkling Hugh has is with the blueprints. The blueprints are weird, and we don't know why they're weird. It's great, compelling storytelling for series television because it keeps showing him look at stuff, but we don't see what he's looking at. And so we're going, what the hell's wrong with these blueprints?
I had questions. I was like, what?
Yeah. And that's what prompts the story. Because Dudley actually sees the blueprint and goes, did your wife draw this? And he goes, yes. Oh, okay. And so you can tell he's thinking, uh-oh, scattered. Scattered, covered, smothered. She's...
Yeah, I was looking for a Waffle House analogy. Scattered, smothered, covered.
The haunting of Waffle House. Yeah. So then we're back in time, and it's basically it's a good scene, I think, as far as character developments, and it's Shirley refuses to ride in the first car because Kevin's in there. She's not going to ride in the second car because Theo's in there, and Steve thinks it's because he's in there, and she goes, it's not all about you, Steve. She ends up having to...
bitch.
Yeah, I know. She ends up having to ride with Dad, and the whole time, Olivia's in the background saying, don't, and he just keeps talking and just pisses her off even more. Which is, I think they probably had part of that in their real marital relationship, where she would say don't, and he would go, no, I can fix it, and then he'd mess it up.
Oh, I'm quite sure. I am quite sure. I thought it was funny that Shirley almost didn't have a ride to the funeral. It looked like she was just going to be standing there while all the cars drove off.
Yeah, I like that too. Then we get Hugh almost cutting his hand off in the fan.
Oh, that's nasty too, man.
Yeah, and I was, okay, here, again, it kind of pulled me out of the episode a little bit, but, sticks his hand in this huge buzzsaw fan.
That doesn't have a grate.
Yeah, well, he took it off. He was taking it off because he said it was messed up and he had to fix it.
Okay.
That's why he told Steve to turn it off.
Yeah, I must have been distracted.
But
my dog did something.
He puts a gash all the way across the top of his hand that looks like it's like 2 inches deep.
It looks like he severed the top half of his hand almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the next time we see him, it's wrapped in like stuff you put like on an ankle for support. Yeah, ace bandage.
Yeah.
Is on it and keeps bleeding through it. And I'm going, shouldn't you have some damn stitches, dude? I think you need to either Rambo up and sew that up or go to the doctor, because it was huge when they showed it.
Yeah, it was bad. It was a bad cut.
And he's standing there dripping all over the floor going, yeah, Steve, why don't you go upstairs and play with your toys? Look, Steve, why don't you call a doctor? I'm getting kind of woozy down here.
Yeah. This is all your fault, Steve.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I told you to turn it off, you little bastard. Look what you did. Slinging blood all over him. Look what you did. Yeah. But so, yeah, it looked painful.
And what does he yell? Fuck!
Yeah. It kind of pulled.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that reminded me of another funny line. The one earlier in the episode when he first finds out about the mold, and he goes,
Yeah.
mucker," and Steve in the background goes, "Really, Dad? Really?"
Right.
It's like,
Right.
I know what you're saying.
So if you stick your hand in a fan, expletives are warranted.
Yes, it totally allowed. It's totally fine. Then we're back in present day, and we are literally at the grave site, and we're tossing dirt and doing the whole say goodbye thing, and we get the first big scare in the episode. And this is, near the end here. We're coming up on the last, 20 minutes or so, and we hadn't had a really big scare. But Luke sees your favorite person above the grave. And and just when we think that's scary enough, because she says something to him. She says, "Stop it," or "Don't," or "Quit," or something. No, she says "Don't," because it's the same thing Olivia's been saying.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she does say "don't."
And when we think that's scary enough, suddenly hands reach out of the grave and start to pull him in. So we get a
my
double
question
scare.
is, are they both now?
No, I think the one in the grave was Olivia, the scary Olivia, the because she's saying, like, "Come on home, come on down here."
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense then. Okay.
That's the impression I got. I don't know. I may have to rewatch that to see, because if it wasn't that evident, they may have screwed up. They should have done.
So now we have two ghosts of Olivia at the funeral: good ghost and bad ghost.
Right. We have the the angel and the devil on the shoulder thing.
Right, because the other one's sitting with Hugh.
And so I got again keys, because we try to do that when we can for this podcast. But I got, of course, Carrie in that one, the movie version.
Oh
of
yeah,
Carrie.
yeah. I had not thought of that. But
Literally
right.
reach out of the grave, and because it reminded me of that whole grate and being pulled down into it, just the way
Into the
she was.
sewer.
She was in the grave itself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
We all float down here.
yeah. And
Come join us.
it's not like I'm obsessed with Stephen King, but then the other one I have here is Salem's Lot. The whole when the gravedigger guy jumped into the grave and everything else.
Oh my God, that's great, David. I didn't even think of that. That's awesome.
So those reminded me. I mean, I had that same kind of instant flash recognition when that happened, because I guess that's how I cope with it scaring me. So
And it's so funny because I'm the guy that reads Stephen King on a regular basis, and I didn't think of any of that. But you're right on all three accounts. Yeah.
And I guess then to get us out of the mood of being scared, we get Steve the Dick comes over and just starts doing his stuff again about mental illness. It runs in the face.
Yeah.
Stop it, or you'll end up dead. I don't want to go to another funeral or whatever. It's just like, what a dick.
Yeah. It's like, when did he become the Wesley of Next Generation on this show? You just fucking hate him.
Yeah, and it's not that I hate Steve. It's just that I think he's a whiny little. He's not willing to face it in himself, but he's willing to judge it in everybody else. I guess that's the issue I have with him, because he was essentially the first episode, and I thought he did pretty good in that, but then he just doesn't get any better. He keeps just droning on about it.
I was just looking for kudos for my science fiction comment.
Well, you should have. I did the horror and you did Star Trek, so it works out.
There you go. See, guys, we're ambidextrous.
We're possessing each other.
We're cross-pollinating.
We have definitely scattered, because Hugh wakes up and Olivia has a screwdriver in his throat, sitting on his chest.
That's a pretty scary scene.
I thought so too. I thought they played it really well. I liked the way she played it and the confusion, and I liked him. And I like the fact that even when he says, "You just held a screwdriver to my throat," she goes, "No, I didn't. I've just been having a bad dream." And he's like holding the screwdriver in his frickin' hand.
Yeah, I think I have scattered in parentheses right there in my notes.
Yeah.
Scattered? Question mark.
And she says something to him I can't remember about. Uh, I something because his reaction is you think, and I can't remember what it was, but it made me chuckle when he said it. It was like a comedy, a sideline in it. No, yeah, she says something like I was having a horrible dream or something. Because his next line is, you think? You have a screwdriver at my throat, woman. But she's definitely scattered. Something's definitely odd. Something's up with the wife. She doesn't remember the blueprint at all, so he has to go and take her and show it to her. What else?
Oh, sorry. I got
No, go
distracted.
ahead.
No. You go ahead. I just was distracted for a second
Yeah,
by my phone.
he shows her the
Got a text.
blueprint, and that's when we finally find out about the blueprint, which it is that she has taken the forever house and drawn it over and over and over again over Hill House. Which again, can you say metaphor, or can you say slap me in the face with the house wants this
Or
to be
can I
their
throw
forever
the
house?
burnt offerings key out there again? I mean,
Oh
she's
yeah,
possessed by the house, just
I
like
had not thought
Karen
of
Black.
that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that just was off the cuff. I didn't have that written down, but it
Yeah.
reminds me of it a lot.
Then we have Hugh trying to talk to Luke in modern day. We're back at the funeral home again for, I guess, a post reception. Although I've never seen that happen at a funeral. Usually after the graveside, everybody scatters. But but evidently Shirley.
I mean, sometimes they do have a reception, and I guess that since it's their family, it was just easiest to do it at Shirley's place.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's
Or
like
yeah,
a wake, I guess, or some part of a
Right.
wake kind of feel.
right. A great opportunity to give Theo more booze that they just lost, and to make Tim laugh.
And then there's but he sees Luke looking at the purse and talks to him, and that's when he says the whole thing about, I see your mother every day, and I have since then. But Luke almost gets defensive at one point and says something like,
Oh,
Big-
he's got a great line.
big
He
boys
says, "Big
know the
boys
difference.
know."
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think he's repeating what his dad told him as a child. Big
Mm-hmm.
boy know what's real and what's imaginary, and he says it like sarcastically.
Yeah. He says it really kind of, sarcastic in his face. Kind
It's
of
like he's
thing.
throwing it back in Hugh's face.
Yeah, and you can
That
tell
was the interpretation I got.
the way Hutton plays it. You can tell that it's like a ouch. Okay, yeah, I deserve that one. Kind of all right. And that's when he says the whole thing about widows do it. It's a grieving mechanism, that sort of thing. And instead of wanting to broach the topic, he just says, "It's good having you here, Dad," and walks away. So it's a good scene. I think again, it's a Luke scene, so I'm probably going to like it. And and he and Hutton, I think, both did it really well. And then we're back to now we find out what the clicking is, and the clicking inside the wall in the basement,
It's
or the
scraping,
scratching,
but yeah, the
scraping,
one
whatever it is.
Yeah,
Hugh thinks it's rats. He wants to
Right.
kill all those bloody rats. So he takes the bricks out, and suddenly there's a skeleton body in there. Another scare.
Yeah.
And this is now we get to see the cop for the first time. He shows up, and they're exhuming this body, and it obviously, when they show it, it has tools and a cane.
there's a
Everything
cane.
over.
I noticed that cane there. I was like, that's interesting.
Well, it's because I think it's the bowler guy. That's what I think. I think that's
Oh.
the guy with the bowler hat who had a cane.
That makes sense. That makes
I think-
perfect sense.
I think that's him. But then when he asked the cop about it, the cop says he walled himself in and then regretted it. But, and to me, a key there was Cask of Amontillado, the Poe story, where
Right.
he gets vengeance by walling the guy in, that kind of thing. But the cop makes a weird reference. He says, and the click, the scratching was him regretting it. And is he referring to the scratching Hugh was hearing and saying it was a ghost, or is he referring to there was obviously he had been trying to scratch his way out before he died or something? I didn't get that. I was confused by that reference.
You lost me there for a second. I know you're saying. I mean, I always thought he was scratching because that's what somebody would do if they were bricked into a wall. What was your other option?
Well, because the cop says in the scratching, you've solved. He says something like, "You've solved one of our longest cold cases, and we thought he was missing, but obviously he bricked himself in." No, Hugh says, "Why would he do that?" He goes, "Well, obviously he bricked himself in. The tools were right there." And then the scratching was him regretting his decision. And I was thinking, okay, the scratching Hugh heard, or were there really scratches on the bricks or whatever? It's just
yeah. You mean like evidence of like scratching? Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. So I was just
because
confused.
I mean, did Hugh tell the cop that he heard scratching? Surely not.
I think he would have to. He would have to say he heard rats in the walls or scratching.
Well, and
scraping.
they could still attribute that to rats too. I mean, just because there's a dead body there doesn't mean there's not rats too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so the cop says that this is William Hill, been missing since '48. So I'm going to try to remember that for later episodes and see if it's reaffirmed. But I think he's the guy with the bowler hat. I think he's the
I mean,
head
if
of the
you
house.
put yourself
the
in
first,
with tools
first
and then
ghost.
changed your mind, wouldn't you use those tools to get back out?
That's what I mean. Use that pick to kind of trowel, knock that wall down, or whatever. If you did it,
yeah, I would think he was dead first, and they just put the tools in there to hide him. Like somebody murdered him,
way.
Put the body in there, put the tools in there, and then bricked it up.
Either way, or the house had driven him so crazy that he literally did brick himself up. And didn't regret it until later when, the ghost is actually scratching. It's like, a key might be supernatural, where the whole, all 48 years of that series or whatever, however it's been on now, the boys are always looking for the body because they have to put it to rest.
There's plenty of keys there. I'll get to them later. Yeah.
So then we're back with Hugh again, and another good scene in this. One of my favorite scenes is Hugh and Steve is getting ready to leave, and he says, he tries to do that makeup thing where he says, "Yeah, my flight's all good, da da da. I'll be at the hotel if you want to have a drink later." And he goes, "No, my flight's early too." And he says, "Steve," and then Olivia tells him everything to say.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Right.
And I thought that was so cool.
It is cool.
And she says the whole thing, "I'm sorry, I regret not talking to you. I regret not telling you. I regret all the time. I'm so sorry about it. I couldn't fix it."
Which I think lends to your argument that it's not her ghost, that it is his subconscious. Because he knows he should say that.
Right. But again, part of him thinks he's protecting them by not saying it. And by just staying out of their lives. Even though he doesn't want to. And I think there's a lot of guilt in there and that's it's so emotional. And again, we say it every episode of this that it's a ghost story, but it's the personal interactions that keep it interesting.
Yeah. Before we move on, if you'll step back to the prior scene, I love when that cop turns around and asks him if that house is haunted.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And he just goes, "Yeah."
Or something like, "My kids think so."
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. My
said.
kids think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the way the cop asks him, too, because he says something like, there's talk all over town, or people always say it, so is it?
Yeah.
That's the question. And you goes, "Is it what?" Yeah. And I like, for me, I like the way it's framed with those big, huge, open, double buttress doors. and
Right.
everything, and the cop's framed right in the center of it, and it's just
And isn't Hugh like in front of the staircase, maybe?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Hugh's framed perfectly center of the staircase there, so it's
Right.
really very and the angle is low, looking up at both of them, so it's really dramatic and theatrical, but I like
Well,
it a
it's
lot.
like they're talking about the beast and they're actually in the belly of it.
Yeah. Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that's even more theatricality. Listen to you. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to
Um,
go back, but I didn't want to forget that line. I love it. Is it really
no,
haunted?
because basically, I mean, we only have the last two scenes, which is
Right.
them all finding out about Luke is gone, Shirley's wallet and credit cards are gone, and Theo's car is gone.
Right. And they
Uh,
immediately suspect Luke,
yeah,
falling
they
off the
immediately,
wagon and going on a binge.
yeah, and that is so true and probably believable, but also just hurt me so bad that
Hmm.
Steve's line again was, "It's been an hour. He probably already has a needle in his arm." And Shirley's is, something like, "Oh, he's going to fuck this up again," or whatever. Just again, that whole thing about Luke always saying, "I wish someone would believe me," and they never do. Um, but again, you have the Hugh has to admit to them that he saw Luke and thought something might be odd.
Right.
And then, so they all scatter. Luke is Steve is going to go search. Shirley's going to go grab, another wallet or whatever she's doing, but they're going to go look for him. And it leaves Theo and Hugh in
Right.
that front room there. And then we
And
get
Theo sees
set up
something.
for the other scare. Yeah.
Yeah. Theo sees smudges on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
which look like I don't know, dirt or I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they follow the smudges. Well, actually, oh
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I went back to Theo's car. All right, Theo sees smudges, and they go into the side room and see that the Forever House has been smashed to smithereens
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and is all busted on the floor.
And she says
And
Shirley's going to be pissed.
yeah, and we see I can't. Is it before or after Shirley comes in that we see the crawling Nell?
It's before. It's before. And it's not Nell, it's Olivia.
Is it Olivia again? Man, they look
Yeah.
alike because I keep thinking I see Nell. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's Olivia, I think. Because half the head is cut the same way it was in the funeral home. We saw it
Oh,
before.
okay. That makes sense.
Um, and remember, Nell didn't have a cut to her face. She just had the
No.
bent neck.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
uh, but yeah, this terror from behind the desk starts crawling toward him, and
And they're
Theo
both seeing it.
screams. Yeah,
I mean,
and
Hugh
Shirley
and
comes
Theo are
in,
both seeing it.
and that's so. This opens up a whole big thing for me. This scene, because Shirley comes in, she doesn't see it, and says, "Who did this?" Blah blah blah, and Hugh says his classic, "I can fix it." Uh, but what it bodes to me is, okay, so both of them saw that apparition. They both saw that ghost, obviously, because he literally pulls her back, and then she starts screaming.
Hmm.
So that's admitting that both of them saw a ghost,
Right.
that both of them saw a ghost in this funeral home.
Hmm.
Um, and from the first viewing, I can't remember, but hopefully they'll make some reference to it. The fact that they both saw that. You
Well, and
know,
it leads to my old argument of um, the strength in proximity. I mean, obviously they're out. I mean, they're not that close, but I think that since the family is closer, it's almost as if the spirits are manifesting more because of the
mm-hmm.
energy they
And
bring.
stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's obviously a spirit that far away from the house and in that funeral home that is fucking with them. My question is, why did they destroy the Forever House?
Well, that's my question. I have that one too. I think it is manifesting. We know it can manipulate stuff because it put the pennies on Nell's eyes last night, and then tonight it destroys the Forever House. So,
Hmm.
but
Do you think
why?
it's like because that's Olivia's dream, and maybe that this is showing that maybe the ghost isn't really Olivia, that it is some kind of evil being manifested, or that is manifesting her?
Yeah, and maybe maybe by destroying the house, that's the dream fantasy that Olivia wanted, and then earlier Olivia drew that all over Hill House. So really, Hill House should be the dream house, the
Oh
forever house
yeah, yeah,
for
like it's
them.
jealous. The house is
Yeah, yeah,
jealous
yeah,
of the
yeah.
dream
Like
house.
that, that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And Shirley's
I mean,
keeping it alive in her
I
funeral home.
just, and maybe we shouldn't do too much of it, but maybe by the end we will. But I don't want to overanalyze the ghost motivation, but I
Uh-huh.
think we need to since it's supposedly a ghost story. And we
Right.
know that when we saw Bentnick, the whole point of Bentnick Lady is it is Nell, and she's trying to warn both herself and the family.
Right.
She's again she's not trying to scare someone so much as she's trying to reach out to them and warn them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this Olivia thing is different. Every time we see her, she scares somebody. She scared Shirley in the morgue room. She scared Luke by dragging him into the thing. She's scaring both Theo and Hugh by crawling out from behind the desk. Um, so there's always a terror factor with her,
Uh-huh.
and I don't really know why. Um, why is she wanting to scare them? She wanted to scare them back to the house. Is she wanting to? Is she jealous, like you said, or is it vengeance, or is it what? What's the ghost motivation here? I need to
Well,
know these things.
uh, okay. Um,
Okay.
I think that if you want to go back to the old good versus evil thing, maybe it is a battle between the ghost of Nell and the ghost of Olivia. And the ghost of Nell is fighting for the good and bringing the family together, whereas Olivia is not. She's
Hmm.
fighting it. Or
Okay.
Nell's ghost is trying to keep them away from the house, and Olivia's ghost is trying to bring them to the house.
Oh, maybe that's why she says don't. That's why Nell keeps saying don't.
You mean
Uh,
Olivia?
no, remember Nell at the grave,
Oh,
Bentnick
Nell
lady
does. Yeah,
said
yeah,
don't.
her ghost does. Right, right, right.
Because she's saying don't go to the house. Because she's talking to Luke. And we
Hmm.
know because we watched the series before. But
Hmm.
Luke's going to the house. And
Right.
so maybe that's what Nell was saying. Because I think
But Luke has
it didn't
ulterior motives.
in last week's episode, didn't she say don't as well? Nell, Bitnick lady? I think she did. I can't remember. I have to
Maybe.
look back to my notes and find out. But yeah, I like that. I think maybe they are opposing spirits kind of
They
thing.
are, I think. And I think it lends even more to your argument that the Olivia that we see with Hugh is just his subconscious manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's saying things that are good as well, and Nell is trying to prevent them from ever going back to that house, whereas the evil spirit is trying to lead them there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and
and
we
it may
can't
not
forget
be
that.
Olivia; it may just be an evil spirit using her appearance or
True.
whatever. Yeah.
True. Well, and we can't forget that we've also seen another ghost outside the house, which is Bowler guy or floating stickman,
Hmm.
um, with
But he
Luke.
never interferes; he just kind of passes through.
Right.
Yeah. He's like a
Yeah.
shining ghost. He just
Yeah.
is there.
I'm just here to give you the presents. Yeah.
Right.
Uh, and wrapping up, the last scene is back to the interrogation,
Right.
and um, our friendly neighborhood don't know what he's thinking, but there's something dark underneath. Cop says, "You said you went upstairs to the red room. What did you see in the red room?" And he says, "Nothing. It was locked. It's always been locked. We don't have a key. but the last shot of the episode is Hugh running down the hallway into the red room, which is open.
Yeah, the door's open.
So, building up, we know that part of that night, that horrible night where everything tore the family apart, like Amityville, the night they left and ran away, Hugh was in the red room.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a fitting end for this episode, and kind of puts it in a can't wait to see what happens next week kind of thing.
Yeah.
You said you had some other keys. Did you have other keys that we haven't touched on?
Well, I have. Yeah, I'm struggling with how I need to present this. I did.
A small box is fine with maybe an inlaid red velvet.
Well, there's back to what you were saying. What we were saying earlier with the transitions.
Mm-hmm.
Using the same phrase in the past and the present, or using a knock on a wall for the past. That kind of reminds me of it as well. I just jotted this down while we were talking, because isn't that the book where he does that with chapters, where sentences start in the past and end in the present, or vice versa?
Yeah. It's my favorite King transition piece is it, because he does that all the way through. And that's, again, you and I are on opposite, I think, sides of the aisle for it, but that's one of the things that I didn't like about the new version of it, was we didn't get the going back and forth in time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So that just kind of reminded me of that. Another key that is kind of a motif, or actually, it's not really a motif. I can't think of what the word is I'm looking for. But it's a predicament that you find in a lot of haunted house literature, are secret rooms with bodies bricked in them, or what have you. And here's three that come to mind immediately. One is a cheesy old movie that my mother loved, that was a television movie called The House That Wouldn't Die, with Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck, I remember that.
And at the end, they find the two lovers' skeletons intertwined. They recognize their rings or something. I can't remember what it was. And they had been buried alive. And then also, Amityville Horror has a secret room under the stairs that's painted red. And mostly Hell House by Richard Matheson. Is about they find that I guess the main perpetrator ghost of the house is named Belasco, and they find his skeleton in a secret room, and it turns out that, I don't know, he had a problem with being really short, and he walked with these like weird extensions to his legs, and they were attached to the skeleton, and that was the big plot reveal or whatever of why the house was haunted.
Okay.
So I was like, this is a common occurrence in a lot of haunted house things. And now we're seeing it here, with the guy bricked into the wall with the tools and the cane. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that before a lot. But anyway, it's just a common reoccurrence. But my biggest key, you happened to mention earlier in passing, is I would go as far as to say that this is almost like an Edgar Allan Poe episode, because of the fact that there is a story like the Cask of Amontillado or the Black Cat, where someone is bricked in a wall. I mean, that's a major thing. But another thing is, like when Steve is arguing to Luke, "Don't you see it's in our genes," is from the House of Usher. Because that was about a family where this madness was descended in the family. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of Poe going on in this episode. Not just the bricks, but just the overall theme in general, too, with the family. So,
well, and you and I have both seen this series, so we kind of know where we're going to land with this. But, I think that carries through the next few episodes. That whole House of Usher, the history of this particular house is haunting this current family and destroying it and tearing it apart, kind of thing. That's very House of Usher. Yeah, you're right. I had not thought of that before, but that's very true.
Yeah, so that
You
was
know,
my
you think of
biggie.
House of Usher, and I think of Supernatural. Yeah, that shows our kind of literary backgrounds, doesn't it? I mean,
Well, I did mention The House That Wouldn't Die, which was a cheesy
well, there is
ABC
that.
television
Yes,
movie
that's
from the
true. That's
70s.
true. Uh, but yeah, so yeah, so overall, I mean, what would you rate the episode? I mean, A, B,
Um,
C, D, F, whatever.
oh, I think it's a fitting coda to the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the last episode's pretty intense. There's a lot of shit going on, creatively behind the scenes and with the writing and the story. And then this one is like, okay, where do we go from there? And it you know, I don't know where I would rate it, you know, as far as, you know, being in my favorites. But it's a good episode. I mean, I think almost every episode, I mean, every episode of this show is solid. I can't think of a bad one.
Correct. Correct.
So
I
so
agree
it's
with you
it's
totally,
it's
and I
good.
think
And when she's pulling him down in the grave, that's pretty scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and again, I think it is a great, like you said, I think code is a good word for it. It ties up last week, moves it forward, you know, and tells it in a very compelling way, and you're not confused. You
Yeah.
know, I think I said it in the first episode that one of my keys, if I had to search for one for this entire season, would be like Westworld, which also deals with, you know, it's a Nolan piece, so it deals with a lot of time shifting, going back and forth in time. And, but whereas in Westworld, they intentionally try to confuse you and make you unsure of where you are in time. I think Flanagan does a really good job of establishing the two storylines, you know, the two things in the timelines, um, and progressing them. You know, especially with this one, which had like 3 different time periods in it, and we could
Uh-huh.
always tell where we were. We didn't say, "Oh, what's happening? Did this happen before that or after? What?" Um, so he's telling in a very non-linear way, but in a very understanding way. I mean, you can understand it and follow
Yeah.
it.
And it has what I'm considering the best soliloquy of all the episodes is in it. And it's Dudley, you know, a small character.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know. You have to go up against that lady in the first episode about her husband. That was a good soliloquy too.
That
That was
was
a good
too,
story.
but I think this was longer.
Oh
Maybe.
yeah, it
I
was much
wish I'd
longer.
timed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually should have. That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that about wraps us up for this one. Listeners out there in podcast land, thank you so much for joining us again. We cannot thank you enough. Please make sure that you, if you do like the podcast, you like us on Facebook, give us a positive review, a thumbs up, send us some emails.
Share us. Spread
Share
the
us.
love.
Yes, spread the horror and spread the science fiction around.
Spread the pestilence.
And from Tim and I, if you want to watch The Gifted, some mutants on television, yay! Or if you want to watch Korean zombies, you know, don't
Yeah.
forget to do that too. And we'll see you next week when we'll actually be nearing the end. We're rounding the corner, coming to the home stretch there.
Yeah,
with
3 more
episode
episodes.
8, yeah, of The Haunting of Hill House. So we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Great.